He stood there, alone in the heart of the California desert, where not even the wind dared to breathe too loud. Before him was Bodie, a town buried by time, cursed by fate. Rotting wooden houses stood askew, like the skeletons of a life long dead. The sunset bled red across shattered windows, where shadows seemed to linger, watching, awaiting. Bodie was no ordinary town. It did not welcome the living. It did not forgive the lost. He could feel it, a coldness like someone breathing down his neck, though not a soul was in sight. The wind whistled through the desert, carrying whispers in a language he couldn't understand, voices from somewhere else. Bodie doesn't sleep. Bodie never sleeps. They say this place is trapped in an ancient curse, a curse without a name, but strong enough to crush anyone who dares to cross its boundary. He heard a faint clicking, like the ticking of an old clock counting down to something no one wants to face. He stepped slowly onto the dusty road, each footfall echoing like a warning. The houses lining the street seemed to be watching him, cracks in the walls gaping like hollow, lifeless eyes. Something was following him. Not a person, not an animal, something else. He could feel it, a presence, unseen but heavy, clinging to the stones, soaked into the rotting wood. Bodie wasn't empty, not really. No one had survived here since the gold rush faded over a century ago, and yet, it felt alive. They say the souls trapped here still wander. Miners, murderers, the betrayed. All of them left behind a hatred that sank into the ground like blood into the sand. He had heard stories of people who came to Bodie, curious or greedy, thinking it was just a ghost town. They were wrong. They took a rock, a shard of glass, a rusty nail, and then they paid. Disaster followed them, like a shadow they couldn't outrun. Every year, the Bodie post office receives hundreds of letters. Letters begging for forgiveness. Tales of accidents, sickness, loss. As if Bodie had reached out and pulled them back in. He stopped before one of the old houses. Its shattered window revealed only darkness. He felt a chill, a pressure in the air like the very air around him was closing in. Did he hear a whisper? A voice, faint but sharp, came from behind the door. "Don't take anything," it said. Or maybe it was just the wind. But he wasn't sure. He didn't want to be sure. Bodie has a way of making you doubt your own sanity. The caretakers say that some nights, when the moon lights the empty streets, shadows move behind the windows, searching for something or someone. His heart beat faster. Not from fear, at least not only from fear, but from a strange feeling. As if Bodie was calling to him, luring him deeper into its secrets. But he knew. Every step forward was a gamble. Bodie was not just a town. It was a warning, a curse, a promise. If he dared take anything from this place, he would never leave it behind. He stood there, on the edge between life and something else, wondering if he was brave enough to go further, or wise enough to turn back. But Bodie didn't care. Bodie was waiting. And the whispers from the desert still echoed again and again, an invitation from the dead. He still stood there on the dusty road of Bodie, where the sunset had long faded, giving way to a darkness that draped over everything like a burial shroud. The air was heavy, as if the ground itself was breathing, each breath laced with ancient resentment. He could hear his heartbeat pounding, but it wasn't just that. There was something else. A distant, faint sound like the echo of a pickaxe striking stone, mingled with the moans of those who had fallen. Bodie was not just a town. It was a massive grave. A place where golden dreams had curdled into nightmares. Over a century ago, Bodie was set ablaze by greed. Gold miners came from all corners, bringing hope and cruelty. These very roads once glowed under lantern light, filled with drunken laughter in saloons, and soaked in blood from ambushes, robberies, and betrayal. He could imagine it all. Miners with bloodshot eyes, driven mad by ambition, ready to kill each other for a single flake of gold. Those hatreds never died with the gold rush. They sank deep into every stone, every beam of wood, every breath of Bodie. When people abandoned the town, they left behind more than broken homes. They left souls that could not move on. He felt cold even though the desert still burned with heat. A gust of wind swept past, carrying dust and something darker. He looked down and saw a shard of broken glass, glinting under the moonlight. It seemed to whisper to him, inviting him to pick it up. But he knew better. He'd heard the stories. The caretakers of Bodie said the town's post office still receives hundreds of letters every year. Letters written with shaking hands, ink and tears, from people who had taken something from this place. A stone, a rusty nail, a piece of splintered wood. They thought these were just objects, harmless relics of a forgotten town. They were wrong. Bodie doesn't allow anything to leave, not without a price. The letters tell of disasters. One man took a small rock as a souvenir. A week later, his car went off a cliff. A girl pocketed a piece of broken glass, thinking it was beautiful. Soon after, she began seeing shadows in mirrors, hearing whispers in the night. A family took home a single rusty nail, and their house mysteriously burned to the ground. They all begged to return the items, pleaded for forgiveness. But Bodie doesn't listen. Bodie doesn't forget. Locals call it the Bodie curse, a warning carved deep into memory. Do not take anything from this place. If you do, the darkness will follow you forever. A chill crawled down his spine. He glanced around. The wooden houses seemed to lean toward him, like they were ready to consume him. Then, a sound. A sharp crack, like someone stepping on a brittle plank. But he was alone. Or he thought he was. He heard a whisper, clearer this time, a voice from beyond the grave. Give it back. Give it back. He wasn't sure if it was real or just in his head. But in Bodie, the line between reality and illusion is thinner than cobwebs. The spirits here weren't just guardians of the town. They were hunters, punishers. He could feel them, invisible eyes watching, waiting for a single mistake. He stepped back, forcing himself to stay calm. But every step felt heavier, as if the ground was trying to pull him down. He remembered the words of a caretaker. Bodie doesn't just take back what belongs to it, it takes your soul. He looked down at the shard of glass again. It still shimmered as if alive. He wanted to pick it up, just to see. But then he remembered the letters, the pleas, the stories of those who never found peace again. He stood there, caught between temptation and terror, knowing Bodie was waiting, and the curse was watching. Darkness had swallowed Bodie, leaving only the pale, cold light of the moon shining down on the decaying wooden houses. He stood there, alone on the desolate road, feeling as though the entire town was breathing, each breath a whisper from the dead. The air was suffocating, as if the earth itself was tightening its grip on him, unwilling to let go. He wanted to leave, but his legs felt nailed to the ground, held in place by some invisible force. Bodie wasn't just a place. Bodie was a presence, and it was watching him. It knew he was here, and it was waiting. The stories of the curse echoed through his mind, those desperate letters sent to Bodie's post office, filled with apologies and terror, from people who had taken a piece of the town and paid for it in blood, in suffering, in soul. He thought of the man who lost his entire family after picking up a single stone. He thought of the girl driven mad by the shadows in her mirror. He thought of the whispers people heard at night, long after they'd left Bodie behind. Give it back, they said. But returning what you took was never enough. Bodie does not forgive. Bodie does not let go. Then he heard a sound, a faint hiss like something being dragged across the ground. He turned. Nothing but shadows. Or was there? A dark shape flickered at the edge of his vision, quick as a blink, but enough to make his heart clench. He tried to convince himself it was just the wind, just a trick of the light. But in Bodie there is no such thing as just. Every sound, every shadow carried meaning, a message, a warning. He could feel them, the trapped souls, those who had lived and died here. They didn't rest. They didn't leave. They watched over every stone, every splinter, and they would never let anyone steal from Bodie again. He looked down at his trembling hands. He hadn't taken anything, not yet. But the temptation was there, strong, seductive, like a whisper from beyond. A small stone glittered in the moonlight at his feet. It was beautiful, too beautiful, as if it wanted to be picked up, to be carried away. He heard a voice in his head, soft, cold, and coaxing. Just one stone, it won't matter. But he knew better. He had heard the stories. And he knew, If he touched that stone, Bodie would never let him leave. The curse would follow him, down every road into every dream, until he returned it, or lost everything. He stepped back, trying to escape the town's pull. But every step grew heavier, as if the earth was dragging him down, trying to keep him forever. He could feel the eyes, dozens, maybe hundreds of invisible eyes, watching from shattered windows, from cracks in the walls. "Don't leave," they whispered. "Stay with us." He wanted to scream, to run. But Bodie's voice was too strong, too haunting. It wasn't just a curse. It was a promise that if he dared, if he made even one mistake, he would become part of this town. Forever. He stood at the edge, between life and death, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew Bodie was waiting. Not just for him, but for anyone foolish enough to enter. The dusty streets, the rotting homes, they were all an invitation. But not for the faint of heart. Bodie doesn't welcome you. It waits for your mistake. A stone. A shard of glass. A single rusty nail. Just one touch, and you become part of it. He looked up at the sky. The moon stared back, cold and distant, almost mocking. He wondered if he had the courage to turn back, or the madness to go forward. But deep down he already knew. Bodie doesn't ask. Bodie takes. And the curse will find anyone who dares to try.